well, today we tried to defeat this 5 minute delay and people showing up. It looks like we caught part of it, so we'll see what happens between now and the next 5 minutes. I don't know if we're going to see another wave of people or not, but it's a little disconcerting to be sitting there with an audience and then have like 90 people show up all at the same time in the middle of a sentence. Um, so look, today I want to announce one thing about these meetups, just so that we're all kind of recognizing how they're playing out and what we sort of expect to have happen. Um, Originally, the idea was we would do an East version and a West version, and we would do identical content in them, and it didn't really work out because events happen along the way, and so it just seems like each session is becoming its own thing, and then they're getting recorded, so there's really no reason. And we may just go ahead and, I don't know, maybe we'll continue to do them at these alternating times, but the content is definitely changing, everyone. So might as well just get used to that part going forward, that there won't be really duplicated content. Today, it's going to be probably a fairly short presentational content, and then we'll do mostly Q&A. I don't know. We'll see. It just depends on how it really plays out. Obviously, the big topic today is the stuff going on in Eastern Europe, and I think it skews really closely to what we're trying to deliver and achieve, because um, you know when these kinds of events happen in any given region and area, um, they can definitely impact and affect internet access and cloud content, and businesses' access to their data and all of that stuff. And I think once we really finally get out there and deliver our product, people are going to recognize that we offer the ultimate solution to that kind of scenario. In that we had this conversation this morning in our community manager meetup, where we were talking about, let's take the USA for instance. If we had at the beginning of sort of our launch, we had customers on the West Coast, and they set up all of their storage providers around their regional interests. So maybe 30, 50, 80 storage providers got data from a individual relayer customer up in Northern California. And then we had East Coast customers, relayers running, and they did the same kind of thing. We might have storage providers located in the midsection of the country who don't have any data, right? They're just not getting any data because the provider or the relayer customers are choosing to aggregate their data close to them for performance reasons. Well, that's really part and parcel of what we're testing these days, and what we're going to be testing more and more over the coming weeks and months is, what do latencies look like, and what does distance do to it, and how does it affect and impact security and durability and availability. It may turn out that if you're in San Francisco and you run, some 15 to 30 storage provider shards on against your relayer, that there's actually a really solid benefit to pushing out to a bigger radius and maybe storing data up into Western Canada, Southern California, even off into, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and south into Texas, in a bigger arc, so that ultimately you have a much greater durability. So if we extrapolate that over to your neck of the woods, some company who's operating out of Kiev right now, instead of having all of their storage providers being focused in a tight, 1, 2, 300-mile radius, maybe what they do is they have 30 providers in that area, but then the relayer is actually out, locating data in, Spain, France, Benelux, UK, all over that area, and then even to the east, right? And pushing, shards of data that direction, so that they always have the capacity to access the data, no matter what happens to the big internet backbones connecting to their relayer, and no matter what happens to any individual set of storage providers. So I think this is going to be a really good event for us to sort of highlight the need for this service and things that are going on. Uh, because I don't think these kinds of events are going to lessen over the coming years. I think with the way things are going, we're going to see more and more of this sort of intranational and international sort of disruption and challenge and so forth. Um, so anyway, I just thought I'd lead off with that as far as what the current events. I will also say this, just so if you're curious about it, um, a significant part of our team is actually over in that area. So, and it's kind of interesting because uh, several of our core engineers are actually in Moscow, and one of our original founding engineers and core engineers was actually he lives in Kiev, but he's actually, because of this scenario, he's actually moved back temporarily to Moscow just so that he doesn't end up getting killed. But the deal is that they're all well, and obviously watching circumstances really carefully. And it also points to the whole crypto thing, because right now we have to pay them, and we typically pay them in US dollars. We do pay one of them in Bitcoin, but the others get paid in US dollars. And that's interesting, by the way, because we could easily pay them in rubles, but they prefer to be paid in US dollars. That's just the recognition of the dollar as the global standard. And I'm about to pay them for the entire month of March, just because if things escalate, the talk is that they're going to put sanctions down on the SWIFT system, and if they do that, then I'm probably not going to be able to pay my engineers, and then I'm going to be forced into a situation of paying them in crypto, and then they'll have to deal with the stuff on their end as far as being able to convert it into a format that they can use to pay rent and buy food with, and so forth. But I think, again, I just think that this is the world we're going to be seeing going forward, and I think it's going to be really interesting. But right now, there's no disruption from those folks, and I think ultimately there probably won't be a major disruption for our development squad. I think we're still on track, everything in April and so forth. All right, so today let's talk a little bit about the topics that are really kind of prevalent, and I think somebody had mentioned, won't it just be all EXA miners from here on out? And actually today it won't be. We'll talk maybe a little bit about the wait lists and so forth, but to begin with, let's talk about a couple things relative to all providers. One is that's come up recently, and we're seeing some interesting results as new people show up, is farms. And so let me just describe what a farm is, and sort of how we view a farm, and whether you want to run a farm, and how you are being sort of measured up against farms, and are you at a disadvantage? Is, if you are a farm, are you at an advantage? So what a farm is to us is, a farm is any instance, within sort of a very tight uh, geographical region, operated and run by a single entity. Um, and in many cases, the way to identify those farms is based on subnet. It's not a given. You can certainly run multiple subnets and have multiple instances. And so it becomes more of a cat and mouse game of how are we going to identify farms. But I think, like everything on our network, what you're going to see is we will essentially incentivize people to identify themselves as farmers, right? I mean, and then for people that essentially try to evade our identification of them as a farm, that try to game the system, so to speak, once we find them, once we do identify them, and there are networking tools and there are all kinds of things that we'll employ that will, give us that ability to do that, um, you know, then we have the ability to essentially shut them off and just make it so that they can't get data from the relayer customers that we're bringing to the table. Still be able to run on the network, still be able to get community rent if they find it, if there's people out there renting on the network, but they won't be able to get our data. So the incentives to cheat against our network are just really low. I mean, you're going to always make more money by not cheating. So I think this is the first one to sort of recognize that. And so what a farm is, it's multiple instances. So right now there's one farm on there I saw the other day that's like 42 instances, and 41, something like that. And it's a bunch of 3 terabyte, rigs. And essentially, um, you can see they're all on the same subnet, so it's really identifiable and easy. And I'm not really sure what it is they're trying to achieve, because nothing in our incentives or anything really skews to that right now. They might have saw the bonuses we gave out last month and said, well, hey, maybe I can earn a whole bunch more bonuses, but it's just not going to work. It's not the deal. So let me explain how farms typically work right now on our regular renter, and then I'll explain how we expect to approach farms going forward. So with a farm, typically what happens in our core daemon, if you were to stand up just the community renter and just upload data, and just let it go to wherever, and the highest scoring providers would be able to grab, data from that upload, farms would right now not exclude them. This is contrary to the other project that we originally forked from, who set up a strong exclusion rule for farms, so that farms are automatically excluded, and you only get the first instance out of a farm, and then everything else doesn't go on any individual data upload. We changed that, because to us, there are values and benefits to having farms. We think farms are going to be an important part of this whole thing. So the community renter right now out of the gate starts out with farms as being, able to accept and be active to collect community rent. But community rent isn't what we're about. What we're about is relayer rent. So in our case, what will end up happening with farmers is that the relayer, we're in the process right now of developing this sprint we've talked about called provider selection. And this is the idea that any individual relayer will have the ability to choose the specific providers that it will upload data to. And we're in this process right now of, determining how much, granularity we're going to give to the IT admin at the customer site, what they're going to be able to pick and choose, how much the partner is going to be able to impact the stuff. And so just to make it easy on everybody, because I know that communications, and sometimes this doesn't always flow through, I'm going to revisit again just a little bit about the architecture, so that you're starting from the right frame of reference. So on our network, there is a group of people called storage providers, and you guys are standing up distributed storage instances around the globe, and they are all seamlessly knitted together in this P2P network. And our software that stores data on your instances is called a relayer. And the relayer is a big server instance that essentially lives either on premise at a customer site, or it lives in the cloud and it is administered by us, or it lives in the cloud and is administered by one of our storage partners. Storage partners are people that get special pricing from us to essentially resell our storage, your storage, essentially, right, to their customers. And so, for instance, we have one called Cloud Factory, who we anticipate at some point might have, 1,000 relayers running in their data center. And then all of their MSP customers and their regular corporate customers and their, people that buy storage from them will essentially contract with them to use a relayer that lives in their facility, because they're close to all their customers. They're in Denmark, and then most of their customers, Norway, Finland, all the way around there. And so what ends up happening is all those relayers live in a centralized facility that they manage. But we anticipate that a lot of customers, because we're doing small and medium enterprises first, then later we expect to move out to full enterprises, will run their own relayers, right? They'll run relayers on site, and these will be software instances that they'll spin up, or there'll be pieces of hardware that we sell them. Because what a relayer is it's a piece of software that manages all of the corporate data that's uploaded to the cloud, and then essentially manages and distributes it to all the storage providers. So what's inside of that relayer again? It's a caching layer that holds all the data while it's being prepared to be delivered out to you guys. It's a Postgres database which holds all the metadata, which right now the metadata is all the key pair stuff. What is that? That's all the cryptographic information that says this piece of the data set is uploaded on, you know, Melvin's storage provider instance. This piece is uploaded on CryptoSpank's, storage provider instance. And so it's all that cryptographic key pair, the Merkle roots and the actual data shard that's stored out there. So that's what the Postgres database does. And it's a tool called Host.io that essentially manages all of those parallel uploads that are being delivered up to the network. It's the erasure coding engine that chops it all up into the chunks that get split up. And it's the encryption engine that actually encrypts everything at the client side before it actually gets uploaded. We expect that caching layer inside of the relayer is going to be really interesting going forward, because we're going to be able to use it to do a whole bunch of different things, like, ransomware protection. We'll be able to, prioritize which data gets uploaded first, like the CEO uploads stuff into the cloud. It bypasses all the stuff that the people down in, say HR are uploading or whatever. So there's going to be ways that we can prioritize, uploads and downloads inside the corporate environment. So the relayer is just going to be this really functional tool that allows the customer to have full, real control over the cloud network, you guys, and, part of that is choosing which ones of you that they want to use. And so, as I said, the idea is typically sort of assumed that most corporates will choose storage providers close to them, relatively close to them. Who knows, as we get big and as we get a lot of, providers on the network, could be very close, could be within 50 miles. An Amazon AWS AZ might be such that the data center is 1,000 miles away, right? But in our case, we might be able to find 50 providers within 100 miles, right? Which might make for extremely performant and low latency uploads and downloads. So this is going to be the big power of this network and so forth. And so the deal is with farms, when you're sitting there with that relayer uploading all this data and choosing these provider selection sets, the last thing you want to do is choose 41 instances for 50 pieces of data in one farm. Why? Because a cruise missile could take out that facility, and then the next thing you know, your entire data is lost because you can no longer, even with erasure coding, access all of your data. So you can't really count that as decentralized, and you certainly can't count it as being durable. It won't live up to the 11 nines of durability we want to provide in our marketing brochures and our SLAs. So to combat that, the relayers will have a mission, and we're probably looking at 2, but the number might change. It might be 3, it might be 4, it might be 1. We're not really sure yet. But what it'll be is, if an instance shows up with 41 instances, right? So provider shows up, sets up 41 instances. Each one has 3 terabytes of storage available, and each one has good dedicated, internet and so forth. We might say every relayer is tasked with only choosing 2 instances from that farm and no more, or 2 instances per Postgres database row, or not Postgres database, but caching database row. And so there's some internal stuff that we can do there that actually I'm not going to get too deep into. When we get to product launch, we'll have this all into a video and can show it. But we have ways to essentially make it so that, we limit how much that farm is actually getting of the data set right out of the gate. Okay, well then why would somebody run a farm? And why, if that's the case, if we're saying, look, we're only going to use 2, then why would I ever run a farm? Farm doesn't make any sense. I should just make, 2 giant storage instances and do that. Well, the truth of the matter is we can actually set it up so that relayer A, right, which lives maybe in, Luxembourg, might be using 2 of the farm instances, the 41 farm instances. But then a relayer in Paris might actually be accessing two different instances in that 41 storage provider. And once we get thousands of relayers out there, thousands of customers, thousands of corporations that are accessing our network, they might be all choosing two different instances within inside that farm, right? So now there's really some really strong potential benefits to that. That farm begins to look like a mid-tier data center, and it will become a very attractive location for us. Now, overall on the network, it might begin to start lessening overall network durability, and we'll have to watch that on a macro basis from a network operations center perspective. But from you guys' perspective, there's real good benefits to that. So, you know, there might be a reason for you to buy 10, 15 examiners, for instance, especially when we start doing them in 1U rack mounts where you can just build up a nice solid rack of them and recognize that you're going to have a lot of capability to draw once we start getting lots of relayer customers in there and so forth. So farms are a situation that there's no real benefit today specifically to put up a farm. There's no real punishment either. You're just not going to earn, any more than anybody else. But as we go forward, there could be some real valuable and strong reasons if you're going to host a lot of storage for you to chop that storage up and to host it in different instances and so forth. And we'll make all that clear as we get closer to product launch. Where you should set your demarcs at, how big of storage you should have on individual instances and so forth and such. All right, so I want to move on really quickly. The next piece I want to talk about is data distribution. And look, somebody mentioned in our Twitter feed the other day that they were really nonplussed and they were glad they didn't FOMO into this project and blah blah blah, and it was just your typical thing. And ultimately, we engage them the way we typically do, with a little bit of irony and maybe a little touch of sarcasm, in that we don't want people FOMOing into the project. If you FOMO into this, you're doing it wrong. And then he mentioned that he prefers projects that are transparent. And look, you can say whatever you want, but what you can't say is that we haven't been transparent. From the beginning, we've been transparent to a fault. In some ways, there's a lot of stuff that we just really don't have to tell people, and we do. It wouldn't change anything if we didn't tell people, but it's just not the project we are, and it's not the project we're ever going to be in. So, one of the things that happened here, we told you when you showed up that, we had set up incentives in such a way to reward these people who were here in the early days, the very early, beginning providers, the 300. And the 300, all had a bunch of data on their units, and it was all quote unquote testing data. And let's be frank, that early testing data was probably about 80% bullshit and about 20% testing data, And what do I mean by bullshit? I mean that we just uploaded nothing, right? We just uploaded stuff just so we could give them coins just because they were here helping the network. And now there's 3,400 providers on the network. So that's not easy to do anymore. We can't just do that. And there's no real benefit to doing it for us now. So, at this point, what we had to do is look at those people. Well, we were fighting all kinds of fires when you guys showed up, right? Crumbled our infrastructure back on our internal servers. We had, all these orders for examiners. We had, all kinds of things that just took us off our game, and we had to solve, just even managing the community itself was becoming a real chore. And so what ended up happening was we didn't really address a few things that we could see, and we knew we had to. But one of those was, the changing numbers of the incentives to bring them back to the in line with what they were supposed to be. And we agreed to do it slowly so that nobody gets really crazy punished here. We understood what happened there. But the other thing that happened was we didn't do anything about all that data that was sitting out there on these early providers. So then the coin price went crazy, right, for a period of time. And, I kept running around to everybody's, people were like, probably trying to get somebody to come over and tackle me because I kept saying things like the coin price is too high, right? And what founder ever says that, right? The stock price is too high. Well, I think Elon says it from time to time. I'm not comparing myself, but the deal was is the price went too far. It went too far too fast, and we knew what was going to happen from it. And so, um, at the end of the day, I started watching in horror as some of these early providers who were really in some cases not all that big of fans of the project. They were just kind of here hanging around. It's in one specific case, and I won't name names, but people here know who I'm talking about if you're been here long enough. The person still, even to this day, after having multiple sessions of multiple people trying to teach and guide and point out and show and do whatever to teach them how to run their unit, still doesn't understand how to set up the unit, does not understand how his unit runs, does not understand why his unit runs the way it does, and if it failed tomorrow, could not set it back up himself. It just is the case. And we paid him like $700 in December for storage, and again in January. And it's not going to be the case in February. And at the same time, I was watching sort of in horror or amusement, depending on how I felt any given day, that people were showing up in the welcome and support channels and, going, yay, I got, 1.2 gigabytes of storage. I'm really happy now. And that just is completely and totally fucked up. And we recognized it because, those guys that were here early deserved to win some bonus, and they did. They got a ton of coins really early on. They just did. They got a ton of coins. But that doesn't mean that should just carry over, and they shouldn't just earn hard forever just because they happen to be here a year before you did. So I've tasked our guys to go and cut that off, right, to stop that big data flow. And that data distribution needs to be turned around. Somebody made a meme about it, about, Morpheus saying, the ring, is off. And I followed up with a meme that there is no ring, because there isn't. It's just a thing where we just picked and choosed, people that we wanted to give data to, and we did. And now we're in this ugly situation where some people are getting way overpaid and some people are getting nothing, and that's not fair. So when this all gets torn down over the next 2 weeks, we will take that testing quote unquote data and we will turn around and distribute it more fairly, which is my favorite thing, socialism. Right? We'll give it out to everybody on a more equal basis. And hopefully what that will do is give you guys, over the next couple, 2 or 3 months, some added incentive to stay online, to stay, performant, to keep working on your units, to make sure that they're available and durable, and give you a little bit more in terms of that monthly payout so that, you can see some benefit to it. I also understand that it's probably likely to then turn around and cause that number to start to grow again from 3,500 providers to higher. And of course, we have examiners coming online every day. So, it's going to get tricky as we go into launch. But we will try and get more data out there onto your units so that you can have some dollars coming in, so that you can, get more coins in your pocket and benefit from the project, going forward. So that's something I just really wanted to cover and make sure everybody was aware of, that we recognize it, we're going to fix it, and you guys will benefit from it. And then we'll run into this again in another 6 or 9 months when we have to come back and say, well, we're going to shut off all the bullshit data, and now it's just going to be real customer data, and so you're probably going to see a slight drop off or whatever. Our goal is not to have any major cliffs in the amount of data that's on the network. So legitimately right now there's probably 100 and some terabytes worth of data that if we just pulled off the network right now, would be ours, not testing, but just this massive data. But we're not going to do that. I mean, that would be dumb for us to do that, so we're not going to do it. So anyway, that's the story there. And, going forward, what we expect to see happen is we'll get into the product launch, and then, I don't know what's going to happen in April. I really don't. I think that we will probably launch with some customers, because we're starting out with these storage providers or partners. I mean, the people that are going to be out selling our storage for us. I think they'll land some customers almost immediately for us, and so I think that will be the case. And then what I hope to see happen is it will just be kind of a continuous up and to the right line, and it will never really sort of have any downward slope to it at all. Um, do I think it'll immediately go flying straight up? No, I don't. It could, but I don't think so. But I also think that the NAB trade show could be a watershed moment for us, because most crypto projects don't launch at things like that. Most crypto projects would say, well, what's the next crypto show we can go to? What's the next crypto event? I didn't even go down to Denver. It's 50 miles away, and I didn't even go. And this like the sixth year I didn't go, or whatever, however long they've been doing it, because it's just not relevant to us. What's relevant to us is selling storage to customers that need to back up stuff for real money. So that's not crypto, and that's not anything related to crypto. And since most people aren't focused on that in crypto, they aren't seeing, those kinds of spikes. We might turn around and see a big spike from that show and from that launch. I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm not even going to guess at this point. So we'll just have to see. And what will end up happening is, as the data supplants this fake data, then we'll take the fake data offline and let it just continue to run that way. And so hopefully by the end of the year, we'll only have all real data, and it will be a really good number of real data, and we'll be able to clearly be able to show people, profitability based off of real customer stuff. And then that's just a subscription model. So the better your providers are, the more performant and durable you are, the more you're going to keep getting picked. The more you keep getting picked, you'll just keep getting more data that will stay forever, until ultimately what you expect to see is your first instances will be 100% full, and they'll just run full forever. And then as you add more and more instances, you just keep adding more data to them, and until we get to, somewhere down the road, 2 or 3 decades from now, and we're rivaling all of the AWS storage that's out there, and we're, the number one or number two cloud. I don't know. We'll see. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to talk just tiny bit about Examiners and what the status is on that, so that if you're here and you have an order in and you're interested, you can know. So as I said, the last couple of weeks, the big thing was getting the California integrator up. It took longer than I thought. It just, stuff happens. They're now running, and they seem to be doing pretty decently. They're getting out 15 to 25 units per day. I think that number is going to increase, and we're talking about staffing up over at night shift and weekend stuff. So I think over the next couple weeks, as I said before, we're going to see a real change in the number of orders that are outstanding. And then as we get to the end of February, I think we should be in pretty good shape pushing through that order number, and we'll get that down into a number that's really manageable, and everybody will start to know exactly when they'll have their units. At the same time, I'm seeing some supply chain freeing up. So depending on what it looks like at the end of February, I probably am going to have to make a decision about reopening the wait list and taking orders again. So if you've been waiting to get in, I think that will probably be the situation that will occur. And the other thing that's holding us up on that is, as we talked about, we had issues with, 0.5 and 0.6 and 0.7 versions of the Examiners, and we're still fighting one last sort of big thorny issue that is locking people up on a initial preliminary screen, and we're seeing some other tiny little things that, we want to kind of clean up. But we're moving and driving towards version 1.0, hopefully to launch in April as well. So I think things are looking really good for that next order slice that we put out there. And if we do open up another order, it might be multiple models, might be a 1U model and along with a flagship, might be a 1U, the flagship, and also maybe some sort of NUC type device. I don't know. I'm still kind of working through all of it, but I think that's going to happen. And just so you know, there are like 12,000 names on the wait list right now. It's two different wait lists, so it's really probably closer to 7,000 total different emails. Then of course a bunch of you guys are, putting in 3 or 4 different emails per one individual. So it's probably really 3,000 to 5,000 individual, specific different humans that are trying to get in on this thing, but it's thousands, right? It's still thousands. And ultimately, what will probably happen is if we open that up, out of, let's say there's, some 5,000 really discrete entities out there, but a bunch of them want to order one, two, three models or 3 units at the same time. We're back up to that 10,000 number. And what we've seen in the past is somewhere between 20 and 30% come through and actually physically order. So extrapolating it out, maybe 2,500 to 5,000 units would get sold in this next batch. So if you are interested and you are planning to do it, you need to start lining up your crypto now, and because it is going to be a pre-order process, same as this current one is. I expect that the build time and turnaround is going to be similar, probably 1 to 2 months, maybe 3. It won't be 12 months. I just won't let us get into that situation. I won't let us get into a really long-term build out like that. But it's coming. So just be aware. And if you've been waiting for one, your chance is coming up soon. So the other thing, we'll probably screw around a little bit with the wait list. Like if people already own units, they'll probably get pushed to the back of the wait list because there's people in the wait list right now that own 2 units already. So just be aware that we're probably going to change the wait listing around. We'll probably turn it into a ticketing system so that you will end up having a clear understanding of where you are in the wait list. The wait lists were really inefficient last time because we just never done them before. So that's a thing that's going on. All right, that's pretty much it for the project information. So I'm going to open it up now for questions. And if there are no questions, I'm going to end the meeting in about 6 seconds and we'll all just go have lunch. Really? Oh, no? Oh, Gold Coin. Wait a minute. Somebody named Gold Coin has the balls to stand up and ask a question. Wait a minute. This isn't the Gold Coin that we see in the chat in the troll box on South Exchange. Is it all the time? Is it, or is that something else? Let me invite you to speak. And if you talk about GLC, I'm going to be really unhappy. But go ahead.
Hey, greeting to everybody. No, actually, I just randomly picked the name on it, so I didn't mean to offend anyone.
No worries. But you're,
I, I'm new in this project. I've been talking to some of them community people here in the community. I'm very excited. The way that this project is coming up is actually is projecting as a service company, not as a miner, but we are actually getting um, benefits about it. That's the other way I understand it. I'm a rookie on this. I There are certain things I don't understand, and I understand that as the project keep growing, there's gonna be some improvement. Um, in my case, I'm just having a couple issues with getting my system up. It's about port forwarding. And that is because my provider, I have T-Mobile, so it's kind of my thing now that I'm trying to go around. But my main question is if there's going to be any improvement, any updates on the UI Windows setup application for less experienced people like me.
well, I think there will be, and I think ultimately the Win UI needs some help. We actually did launch today, although I haven't done the announcement yet on it, a wallet that will supplant the Windows UI wallet and make a really convenient to use browser based wallet. But it doesn't have any of the hosting features in it. It doesn't have the storage provider features in it, so it doesn't really solve your problem, and your problem isn't really solved by the Windows UI anyway. Your problem, it sounds more like it's around the port forwarding issue, and that is an area that we also expect to tackle. One of the things that I've been pretty cognizant of is that we have a pretty good team. I think if you compared our team to a lot of teams in crypto, we have a pretty good team. And pound for pound, every developer on our staff is really strong in a lot of different areas, and it's been that way from the beginning. Even the guys that helped us fork the coin, and it's just been a good team. But it's also been clear to me that we're now at that place where we can really need some very clear expertise in specialty areas. So, finding a developer slash network person who can really come in and do some interesting things to make the port forwarding process a lot easier than it currently is definitely something I'm interested in, and it's definitely something we will pay for, because the port forwarding thing is horrible. It's just horrible at this point, and
I agree.
it catches everybody, and at the end of the day, the problem is there are 9,000 router models out there. There are 400 different ISPs. There's 19 different protocols that everybody uses, and then people have different levels of service. So it's just not an easy thing to solve. And we tried some software that's out there on the market, doesn't really do a good job. So ultimately we'll work on it, but at this point, the UI, there's a UI out there as a the basic financial wallet, so that'll help you get going there. But yes, I think also we probably will clean up the Windows UI hosting wallet at some point. Doesn't mean that I'm going to recommend people use a UI for hosting, because I still think the CLI is the right answer for hosting. But for setup, the UI is really useful, and it's very, very powerful. So there you go.
I really appreciate your time. Like I said, I just find out about this project. I am very, very excited about it. I was trying. I was on a different project, but I just felt that that other project, that earlier stage, it was gone, and then it was a lot of people into that project. It was oversaturated. I and I just discovered this project, and I'm excited to just get into it early enough to be part of the beginning of the project. But it's like I said, I'm just a rookie. I wish I could be one like you guys. That you guys have a ton of experience and knowledge, and I have been people in the community help me out, and I'm just trying and learning as I go. But I just want to just put my concern on it, and I really appreciate you guys.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's Shadid.
Hey man, hey,
How's it
can you hear
going?
me?
Yep.
Good. Not bad. Can't complain. Given what's going on in the world, we're doing good. Wanted to ask some questions about the partners you guys are getting, the MSPs, and the people who are actually going to be selling the data storage. Can you give some details, who they are? Who are some of their customers? What are the sizes?
Yeah, well, that's jumping the gun a little bit. What we did. Let me talk about where we've been so far with the storage partner program, and where it's at and why it's where it's at and so forth. I certainly don't have the level of granularity you just asked for, and I'm not even sure that I would share that information even if I did. But what I will say is this: so in December we were on a track to do certain things, and then we kind of got disrupted by the community growth the way it happened. So a lot of things that we were right in the middle of sort of got put off to the side. And then we ran into some other things relative to the Examiner build out. And everybody knows the Examiner build out has become a central thing, and ultimately is going to continue to become even more central, because it's turned out to be a preliminary function to fund the company and to fund the project and go forward. And I just think it's the most ideal strategy that causes us not to go out there and seek funding on the open markets and so forth. So Examiners took a lot of focus off of the product launch and the product building too much, and I'm really unhappy about it. I've expressed to the team how unhappy about it, and I think they're getting tired of my unhappiness, and hopefully they begin to get us over this hump over the next several days, and we get back to doing the project the way we were. And one of those initial things that we really are focused on is getting this storage partner thing nailed down tight. So what we have right now for the storage partners is we've got a program, right? We've got some documents that we pulled from another company who had done some work with storage providers, MSPs, and other partners. And so we have an idea of a two-tiered structure, which is sort of a full enchilada and just more of a affiliate model. The affiliate model is just you resell the storage and walk away, and they sign a contract with us, and end up you get an override off it. I think that will be pretty popular for a lot of storage providers because they won't have to really, be the customer management people, and they won't have to really do a lot of work beyond just going out and being hunters and finding customers and bringing them in and turning them over to us. The other ones, though, the ones that are really the more MSP distributor type partners are really going to be the more valuable and interesting ones, because they are right now cloud consultants. They're people that are already have Amazon and AWS and Azure certifications, and already have SME customers under their belt, and they already have the ability to say, well, look, I can just open up Veeam for them and then switch out a URL so that instead of pointing at AWS or whatever cloud, it's pointing at the SC Prime network. And so that's what we're really going to focus on when we do the product launch at NAB. It will not be a main focus of end customers. It will be a main focus, 70% of attracting MSP types, distributors, partners, and then 30% will be the retail crowd and so forth. So I expect that partner strategy will get pulled back up onto the table next week, and we'll be back to revisiting it. We'll finish out the SLA docs that we've started. We'll finish out the terms of service docs that we started. We'll nail down how much the margin we think we're going to pay those people. We'll nail down the pricing that we think that we're going to, offer in terms of the product. And then over the next 6 weeks in advance of the trade show launch, we will be out there beating the drum, generating the people that you're talking about. We already have, a handful that are tied to the project and are related to us, who will get us started and kick us off. One in Florida, one in Denmark, one in Massachusetts, one in California. So we already have some. And by the time we hit the road show of the product launch, I expect we'll probably have 15 to 20 storage partners who are ready to roll and ready to launch storage on the network and, hit the ground running the day we launch product.
That's awesome. And then I guess if there's not a lot of other questions, with some of the customers that you guys are doing beta testing, what are some of the positive and negatives that they've come across using the platform and the data center?
Well, it's all been about how performant the relayer is. And, at first, as we talked, the relayer, started off being, okay, but not great in terms of performance. That it worked at all was a big win for us. I mean, this was a thing that the other project that we originally came out of, was talking about doing for years, and they never got it off the ground. They never did it. Just the idea that you could stand up this instance and 1,000 people in the corporation could all access the same wallet is really a pretty big achievement. So performance was never really the first line of things. So, or last year, it's been all about performance tuning. And so massive amounts of parallelism. We've driven in there doing all this testing, saturating as much as a 20G network pipe. It's been insane what we've seen as far as performance improvements in terms of uploads. And it applies to downloads as well, because it's all using the same mechanism. So that's been a really big thing. And now I feel pretty comfortable as a salesperson that when I get out there and I have to actually sell this thing to somebody, that, comparing our performance to an incumbent cloud like AWS, I'm going to be able to say in many cases that we can beat them flat, just because our architecture is way, way better. Because in their case, you upload one whole copy to one location. So they've developed all these strategies to do things that they call their snowball, which is they will send you hardware. You load up the hardware at your network and then send, UPS your hardware back to AWS, and then they upload it to their network. I mean, it's goofy. In our case, it's like torrents, right? It's like if you're uploading to 50 providers at the same time in parallel, you can upload a lot of data and saturate any kind of network pipe you can bring to the table. So it's the performance is really the thing that we're seeing, and that's what people that are using the relayer right now are really talking about. There are still a lot of, the common tools, rclone, VM, those things that are primarily being used. The next 6 weeks, again, will be onboarding more trial people, because right now I've got an email box full of trial requesters who have not yet been turned loose on the network. So I'm going to essentially announce this right here. I didn't really plan to, but there's no reason why I wouldn't. We have brought on another dev, and I still have to sign a contract with him, but we brought on another dev who's tasked with developing this front end application to the relayer. And this front end application right now is a Docker container that just is really very rugged and so not very user friendly, and so pretty IT admin heavy. But what the dev is going to be working on is building out this relayer application so that operating a relayer is just real easy. It's just real simple, and you just fire this thing up. It will instance all the software behind it, will instance the cache, it will set it up with all configurability, all of the stuff we're going to talk about as far as, what providers that the storage goes off to and so forth. And so that application will be ready to go over the next several weeks. We'll get a rough version out there in a couple of weeks, and I will start onboarding more of those trials. And then probably if you ask me this question in 2 weeks, I'll have a better answer as far as what they're actually saying that's different from what the people that trialed in, November, December, and January.
Right. Right. That's great. So another question I have is, I work with a lot of companies that have a ton of data, right? And I've asked them these questions, here and there, just because I'm close with them, what would be the reason for them to move? And a lot of them say price, which is the obvious answer, because they care about the economics and the margin. And then it's security, which I think you guys have, but then the platform security, right? Like, what if SCP doesn't exist anymore? How will that transition my data, right? How do you answer those questions? I mean, I just want to know for myself when I'm going to people trying to introduce them this project later on, how would I answer this?
Well, I mean, if you're introducing it to people that are going to be using the data, then the question about, what happens if we don't exist as a corporation is probably relevant, because to them coming aboard, the answer is probably not very clean. I mean, at the end of the day, when we start off the standing up of a relayer, taking of money, the contractor is a centralized thing right now. It just is. This is the evolution then revolution tag. So what happens is they pay us dollars, we pay the coins to build the contracts, and then we provision out to them how much storage they have on the network. So if the whole thing in our corporation crumbled, all of our personnel, decided to fly off to Mars, for some reason, well, then, yeah, that would fall apart for them. They, would have a challenge with their thing. Other decentralized projects will say, well, it doesn't matter if we're not here anymore. They can just put in coins and use the network themselves. And that's the future. That's definitely the roadmap for us. At some point down the road, we will push contracting out to the individual customers. Right now, they control their data. We do not have access to their data. We do not have, all we have access to is their access to the network. And we can shut that off, right? But we can't do anything with their data. So they control their data. So right out of the gate, we're better than AWS and Azure because they control their data, between here and the data center, the data storage providers. In the future, what will happen is they will also control the payment of that data, and then we could go away at some point conceivably, and they would still be able to access and gain, more data on the network and do all of that stuff going forward. That said, I'll also say this: there's nothing stopping any other corporation from standing up an instance on our network and trying to compete with us on our own network. And I fully expect at some point that will happen. But I also fully expect they're not going to have a chance because we just have so many structural advantages over anybody that wants to use our network right now that they will better be served by working with us as partners than, as attempting to try and take over the network for themselves or whatever. But, you never know how that's going to play out.
Okay, cool. Thanks for your time.
Sure. Hey, no more questions. Looks like we're going to have a short one today. Are we going to get done in an hour? Looks like it. Last call for questions. Oh. Okay, going once. I knew it. There's always somebody who says, the very last minute. Go ahead. Got to come to the stage and unmute. Okay, I guess we're back to this. Going once. No more questions. All right. Thanks for showing up. I know a lot of the stuff about the data distribution will be widely talked about in the channel, so this will probably be a meetup where the follow-up will be probably as important or more important than the actual stuff that I said today. So definitely talk about it, ask questions about it. Master is working hard on this area, and the distribution of this test data and the stuff that we're working on is really going to occur over the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye on your instances. Definitely ask questions. We'll try and answer them as much as we can. And thanks everybody for coming. And oh, hang on a quick second. Oh, I thought we were going to get another. Question in there, but all right, we'll do it now. Going once, going twice, and have a great one.